James Cameron has made a lot of great movies. I love a lot of what he's done.
Created all these like snorkeling underwater technologies to do these things.
What does that say about which one James Cameron thinks is the more goated movie?
What's going on, y'all? Welcome one, welcome all to Screen Rant's Challenge My Goats. My name is Liam Crowley, and I'm your shepherd through this journey of superlatives as we crown some of the greatest topics in film, television, a little bit of music, entertainment as a whole, history. And with December coming around, it's only appropriate not to go in the Christmas direction. We'll save that for next week. We are going in the direction of the greatest James Cameron film of all time. Avatar: Fire and Ash is gearing up for a big theatrical release. It's going to be a big splash at the box office. Let's take a journey through Jim Cameron's past and see which one is the greatest of all time. Our expert today is the content director at MovieWeb, Mr. Alex Leadbeater. Alex, you're on our inaugural episode. Welcome back to the show. What makes you qualified to declare the greatest James Cameron movie of all time, and what is your pick?
Hello, Liam. Thanks for having me back. I'm looking forward to be the expert this time. So, when it comes to James Cameron, there's few directors that I have as title lock on. Seen all his movies, obviously. Seen them all multiple times, except for Piranha 2. But also, the things that he does, I'm a fan of in a much bigger scope. I love time travel movies. I love the Alien franchise. I'm a big Titanic nut. Every single thing that he covers, I have a very deep affinity with. So I understand his movies not just on a technical level, an artistic level, an action adrenaline level, but I understand exactly what he's going for. So it goes very deep. And the movie of his that I have the deepest connection to, that is, I think, undisputed as his greatest, I don't think there's going to be a lot of controversy here, is Titanic.
I knew you were going to pick it, Alex. It's in your bio over on MovieWeb that you have a deep affinity for Titanic. Excited to see exactly why. Excited to hear you articulate it in words themselves. Our challenger today, the head of original content at Screen Rant. It's a rematch from our inaugural episode. It's Mr. Todd Gilchrist. Todd, welcome back to Challenge My Goat. What makes you qualified to debate the greatest James Cameron movie of all time?
First of all, happy to be back as a challenger this time. I'm wearing this hat today as a bit of misdirection, honestly. But in part because Aliens is in fact my favorite James Cameron movie, but that's not the movie that I've chosen today. But the reason that I feel I am qualified to challenge Alex's opinion here is that, I've been watching his movies since 1985 or 86. Aliens is the movie that I have seen the most in my entire life. I have been a collector of his movies, almost every single one of his movies, through virtually every iteration on VHS, on DVD, on Blu-ray, and so forth. And I have studied and watched and examined these films for their artistic merits, their technological merits, all these different kinds of achievements that these films have been able to make throughout his career, and then also just had the opportunity throughout my professional career to speak with James Cameron and cover his films directly. So I think that it is, in my opinion, earned me the right to be qualified to qualify as an expert with all things James Cameron.
We have two Jim Cameron historians on today's show, and I am excited to hear how you all lay out that knowledge and use it to defend each of your selections. Alex, we'll start with you. You're going to lay the foundation for us. You got 1 minute to tell us why Titanic is the greatest James Cameron movie of all time.
Okay, not to sound like the marketing department for Hamnet, but Titanic is one of the greatest movies of all time. It is a movie, I would say there is no movie in the last 30 years that has risen to the status of classic as effortlessly as Titanic. Obviously the highest grossing movie ever made when it came out, had a massive re-release in 2012, 11 Oscar wins. It's a movie that is so embedded in the popular culture that you can point to a half dozen iconic moments, lines, scenes, shots that have nothing to do with the great historical story that frames it. I do not think that is disputed. Todd can try, but there is no way to say that it is not a movie that has really lodged itself there. James Cameron has made a lot of great movies. I love a lot of what he's done. His action is very, very well done. His pushing of the technical envelope, even in his lesser movies, is still incredibly strong. But nowhere has he been able to balance all of those things together as well as with Titanic. And I'd love to talk more about the true story when we get into it as well.
All right, a good little sample of what's to come. Todd, you got a minute to lay your foundation in terms of rebuttal. Why is Titanic not James Cameron's best?
The film that I'm choosing is not, in fact, the one that I'm wearing on my hat, which is personally my favorite James Cameron movie, but a different one, which I will get into in a minute. But the reason that I actually would argue that Titanic is not the greatest film that James Cameron had ever made is because the films of his that, to me, resonate the most deeply, the ones that are the most powerful, are the ones that are injected with James Cameron's sort of irrepressible creativity. And I think that this film is too slavishly devoted to achieving a certain historical and technological verisimilitude to actually be able to kind of cut loose in the way that his other films have done, and I would argue more successfully. That's not to say that Titanic is not an incredibly well-made and incredibly entertaining movie, but by comparison, when you have these other films that are really unleashed in their creativity, they're unrestrained. You have these incredible masterpieces that I think that exceed that of Titanic.
Okay, well, Todd, I need to know what the challenger pick is. Who are you bringing to the table to challenge Alex's pick of Titanic?
My challenger is Terminator 2: Judgment Day.
All right, here we go. Two classics from the Jim Cameron library. Fellas, now we get into the debate section. I have some questions ready to kind of steer this conversation, but I want to give Alex the floor first based on everything Todd just said. T2 Judgment Day. Heavy hitter. A lot of people would crown this as Jim Cameron's best. Why do you think Titanic is a leg above?
I mean, I agree with Todd. I don't think T2 is his best or my favorite or anything like that. It's probably the hardest to argue. It is a movie that is so perfectly built. I'm not going to dispute that. What I am going to focus in on is what his dispute is on Titanic. So, he agrees. The love story works. The epic scope, the way in which the sinking is depicted, all of that I think we can agree works, and we don't spend a lot of time hashing that out. I think it's kind of wild that you argue this movie lacks imagination. And sure, it may not have a dollar at the end of the word alien. It may not have the robot from his dream coming and hunting down a woman. It may not have sort of that novel spin. What it does have is an incredible high level of creativity in how do we tell this story. The Titanic story has been told many times. It has never been told before or since in a way that is so absolutely dominant. And there are a lot of decisions that Cameron makes, from how he chooses to frame the story, how he chose to make the movie, how he chose to recreate what with CGI, what with full sets, what with the massive recreation of the ship itself, all of that go into making it incredibly creative. I think to say it lacks imagination is to say that you can only have imagination in sci-fi, fundamentally.
Todd, we've heard a lot from your end about why Titanic is not the GOAT. We've heard a lot from Alex rebutting why he believes Titanic is the GOAT. I need some color for T2 Judgment Day. Let me know exactly what about this film resonates with you and why, even though it's not your favorite, you qualify it as James Cameron's best.
Well, first of all, just to sort of clarify the point that I'm trying to make, it is not at all to suggest that Titanic lacks imagination. I am suggesting that it lacks as much imagination as a film like Aliens or Terminator 2 in this case. Very specifically, Terminator 2, in my opinion, is the first film where James Cameron was really able to sort of target and really drill down even better than the original Terminator and certainly Aliens, in terms of being able to tap into all these ideas that fascinate him about sort of technological fear, to talk about apocalyptic nuclear holocaust, these things. But what he does with this film is that he pushes forward those ideas while also combining it with something of absolutely incredible creativity and just like unbridled imagination. First of all, you have this idea of the T-1000, which by itself is such a technological marvel, not just in the conception of the universe that it exists in, but also in the telling and the creation of it, which if you watched the ILM documentary that is on Disney Plus, they really highlight how absolutely significant it was. Like that Jurassic Park could not have happened without this happening came first, things like that. And, and but the reason that it endures is not just because it is this incredible technological breakthrough, this sort of historic moment, but because he marries it with all of those things that I think that Titanic does later, but in my opinion, in a more resonant, in a more beautifully dramatic way that is slightly less conventional than what I feel like he is doing in Titanic, which to me is a pretty straightforward, like upper deck, lower deck, upstairs, downstairs romance. And then you also have the minutes of the history and the chronology of the destruction of the Titanic. In this film, you have the future, you have the past, you have these characters who are coming together, you have the idea of this mother and this son who have been estranged from one another, who also are reconnecting, while also they're discovering that this creature, this entity that was once this fearsome creature has inadvertently been the funnel and the reason that they're actually able to reconnect. And to me, that's kind of like an amazing imaginative reinvention of some of the ideas that are in the original film, while also delivering incredible action, great performances, and again, just like absolutely gobsmacking special effects.
You said the magic words. I always wait to see who's going to bring it up first. This film, laid the foundation. It walked so other films could run. It was a technological achievement that made something like Jurassic Park possible. And while I totally agree with that sentiment, I'm curious, Alex, if you have anything to add on the Titanic front of things. Where did Titanic set the stage for how film would eventually be revolutionized in years to come?
I just want to say it's a real low blow to say, oh yeah, the romance isn't an issue, and then immediately make a jab at the romance and then go, this movie's unique. This movie, it's about a mother reconnecting with her son. Never been done in the history of cinema. T2 walked to every movie about a mother-son relationship could run. Like, if I could be reductive too. Titanic is upstairs, downstairs on a boat, but is on the boat, the doomed ocean liner. So I just wanted to rebut that. But to get to your question, Liam, where Titanic sort of laid the foundation, there's obviously the immediate imitators. You have, your Pearl Harbors and your big, let's take a real life tragedy and turn it into something where we filter it through a romance. If you look at it technologically, Titanic is a lot less singy than T2. T2 has the T1000. It has a bunch of amazing practical effects, loads of cool stuff going on in it. But if you look at Titanic has that incredible shot of the ship, never been able to recreate before. You go back and watch A Night to Remember, and it's all models. It's all very clearly a model in a bathtub. That sweeping shot near the start when the ship goes to sea and the camera pans out over backwards and you've got all the CGI humans walking around, that is a sense of scale and a sense of CGI build that really hadn't been done previously, and obviously cascades through. If you go and look, obviously, Lord of the Rings also was very key in doing that. But if you look at where we are now and where movies are, a lot of what James Cameron did there is that it's a bit silly to even try and go, this James Cameron movie is more influential than another, because every single time he makes a movie, he's trying to push the envelope further. But there's a lot of different influences that exist there. I think the other thing is Titanic shaped how we view the Titanic. The Titanic would still be a big deal. The 100th anniversary of the sinking would have still been a big deal. There'd still have been the massive tourism industry. I've been to the Titanic Museum in Tennessee that is shaped like the ship hitting the iceberg. That would still exist. There'd still be people obsessed with visiting the wreck and all associated things there. But the James Cameron movie just cemented it as a true longevity. This didn't just influence movies, it influenced the wider culture.
I remember the first time.
Then also, the final thing, this is the movie that cemented Leo. Like, for a while, it was like the other Leo movie, he's so much better when he's with Scorsese, but this is the movie. He'd done Romeo and Juliet, he'd had Gilbert Grape, but this movie took Leo into the stratosphere, and that is another incredibly important influence that we have to talk about. Linda Hamilton's in Stranger Things, so whoop-de-doo.
Any other talking point, I would have yelled at you for interrupting me. But any Leo praise, I'm definitely here for. It's funny, too, that you mentioned how Titanic shaped how we view the Titanic, because the first time I saw this movie, my family owned it on VHS, which I know I'm showing my age a little bit, that we owned it on VHS, and that was a big deal for me to watch it that way. But I was first watching this movie at 5 or 6 years old and thinking, how did they have cameras back in the 1910s, and how did they know to document this thing? Because I was so blown away by how the scope of it all, the scale of it all. So I think you make some really good points there. And when I bring up, my first memory with Titanic, this is now when we get into the stage of your first memories with your respective GOAT selections. Todd, we'll go to you first. Nostalgia temp check, T2 Judgment Day. What was the first time you watched this movie? Who are you with? What was the setting? And do you believe the first time you experienced it has given you any type of nostalgic influence as to why you believe it's the greatest?
I mean, possibly, but I remember when I went to see this movie, I got invited by one of a neighbor of from around around my neighborhood who had gotten tickets to go see it at midnight. I think it was the day or two before the movie opened, and so I went to a full theater at midnight, which when you're 15 years old, that by itself is incredibly exciting. But I had been watching the trailers for this. It was like after this followed, for me, it followed Batman, and then it followed Darkman, which was one of my favorite movies when it came out. And this was like the next movie that I could not wait to see. But I'd been watching the trailers for it for months and months and been so thrilled. And I had long since fallen in love with Arnold Schwarzenegger as an actor and all this other stuff. So when I sat down and watched it, it exceeded every expectation that I possibly could have had. And that's certainly, I think, absolutely impacted my initial feelings about it. But I will say, as I also date myself by saying that when I was graduating from high school is when they were releasing it on VHS, not only in an extended cut, but they also had a making of the movie. And I was so obsessed that with all of the intricacies of how it was made, and I was paying attention to that, and I had as much thirst and interest in all of that as I did in this incredible story that I feel like it tells.
It's special to hear you say that, because I can't even imagine what it's like to not have trailers on demand, like having to go to the cinema. If you want to see just the little snippet of T2, that's the only chance you're going to get to see it. We're so spoiled nowadays with just like, oh, the trailer, it's on Twitter, it's on Instagram, it's on TikTok. Like, you can't escape trailers nowadays. So that's a very, very special anecdote. Thanks for sharing that. Alex, for you, first memory with Titanic, set the stage for me. Was it 1997?
It wasn't 1997. Wasn't quite old enough to go see Titanic in the theaters when it came out. I actually don't remember. We're all aging ourselves. We're all dating ourselves very clearly. I don't remember the first time I saw.
Couple young guys.
I don't remember the first time I saw it, and I think it speaks to the secondary nature that Titanic had. You watched it on VHS, probably a 2-part VHS. One of the big things that that movie was known for was Titanic was always on TV, and you'd start watching it, and like The Great Escape or like a Bond movie, as we talked about previously, you would get sucked in. And it didn't matter if Rose was just getting on the ship, it hit the iceberg, or it was already up in the air. You would sit and you would watch it through to the end. It was a movie that grabbed you and you couldn't stop. I'll wait for the next ad break. I'll wait for the next ad break. And I have a very vivid memory of a time watching Titanic. We were on holiday in New York City, where Liam and I are now based. And we started watching Titanic on the hotel TV. And you guys won't get this, but the amount of ad breaks in the US is a crazy amount, like more than double what we'd get in the UK. And I remember there being an ad break after the ship had sunk, and there's still more movie to go. And the scope, the scale of it, that kind of speaks to watching those movies on TV at that time. I don't know if I'd seen Titanic all the way through to the very beginning, the framing, the beautiful stuff he got of the actual wreck, which was his main motivation for making the movie. But that was my experience with it. It was a very sort of standard experience that you have with a lot of great movies that you're unable to see in the cinema. But it's a movie I've gone back to many times. I saw it on the re-release in 2012 in 3D. The 3D didn't add all that much. But I've watched it full, probably more times than any other movie, over 3 hours. And it's a movie that, in its completion, is so much greater than watching it in the little TV snippets.
There is something really special about when you're just clicking through the channels and you come across that movie on FX. FX is like the go-to channel when it comes to re-releases. And there are so many of those ones for me. Titanic was never that one because I would only ever watch it, like I said, on the VHS tape. But it's very special to hear that anecdote. Todd, a question I want to ask you before we round out today's debate. Titanic is a singular, standalone movie. It is an isolated story in James Cameron's filmography. Terminator has been milked to death. That franchise has had a lot of ups, a lot of downs, a lot of just kind of nothing burgers throughout the years. Do you feel that the films that came after T2 Judgment Day, especially the ones that are getting released in the 21st century, do those hurt T2's legacy at all, or is T2 able to fully stand on its own? And despite all the garbage that came in down the line, T2 is still untouched.
I think it's not only do I think it's untouched. I think that all of those films, bad or good, only exemplify the legacy and burnish the legacy of Terminator 2, because Terminator 2 is so good that it justified people trying and trying and trying again to recapture or recreate or push forward that magic. I would never argue that those subsequent films are as good as either the first or second film. I like Dark Fate. Okay. I'm not a big fan of the rest of them, but that's a sort of lukewarm reaction to that particular film. But the reason that I am interested or willing to give a filmmaker, much less James Cameron, another chance to tell parts of that story is because that movie is so good. And I think that it really creates such an extraordinary foundation. I mean, I think that the first Terminator absolutely sets a lot of that stuff up, but really you see the technological and the creative meaning in the universe of Terminator coming together in such an extraordinary way in Terminator 2 that it really created this opportunity that a lot of people, unfortunately, haven't capitalized in a successful way, but I think that it has justified their attempts.
Todd, you're making the Michael Irvin argument. I'm not sure if you're familiar with what he said not too long ago. He's an NFL player, and his number 88 is not retired by the Dallas Cowboys. And they asked him why. Why wouldn't you have your number retired? You definitely have deserved to have your place in the echelon. And he goes, because there's a football player right now named CeeDee Lamb who's crushing it, and he wears number 88 for the Cowboys. And he said, because if CeeDee Lamb goes out there and lights the field on fire, they'll say he looks like Michael Irvin out there. And if he stinks, they see 88 and they say he could never be Michael Irvin. So T2, no matter what happens, we get a good Terminator film, man, it looks like T2 out there. We get a bad Terminator film, it could never be T2. So I like that argument. Alex, you were making some faces. You were nodding along when I said about the stinky legacy that kind of came from the Terminator franchise. Do you personally believe that T2 is hurt by the Genesis with a Y of it all?
I mean, I would say don't trust anybody who says Dark Fate is the best of the failed Terminator movies, for starters. But like it does cheapen it. I think one of the things that Todd didn't bring up, and maybe he's not brought it up because it kind of hurts his idea of this cohesive story Cameron's telling. T2 retcons the fuck out of the first Terminator. The first Terminator is kind of nihilistic about the idea of, the future is written and we can fight, but at the end of that movie, it's very much going to go in a time loop. Kyle Reese will come back, Father John Connor, and in a loop. T2 changes that. They actually do change the future, and that change is an interesting one. I don't think it makes it a bad movie, but it highlights how the trajectory that Cameron was taking, it wasn't a cohesive trajectory. The later movies, just simply not it. I don't think any of them really rise, but the amount of times that Cameron's been trotted out, Arnie's been trotted out to say, oh yeah, we think it's good, and they always harken back to Judgment Day, it does hurt it. It does weaken it. I think people are less likely to go into Terminator 1 and 2 now than they would have been before Dark Fate, before Genesis, before Salvation, before Rise of the Machines, because Terminator is just another action sci-fi dour franchise. I don't think it makes T2 any less good as a movie, in the same way that I don't think, Avatar massively impacts whether Titanic is a great movie or not, but it definitely doesn't help.
Todd, you're making some faces. I want to give you the chance to talk before we close out the debate section.
Yeah, well, first of all, I mean, I think that, I think it's interesting, that you suggest that somehow that film's capitulation to something that is a inarguably happier ending is somehow a betrayal of the first film or some sort of recasting of it, when whether and I actually don't know the truth about the reasoning for it, whether it is an actual capitulation to sort of the commercial finale of a story or not. But to me, this also speaks to why I think that it exceeds Titanic, because what you have, and this is what I started with, which is my argument, is that James Cameron's determination or the limitations of telling that story as authentically and exactingly as possible, in my opinion, is what limits Titanic. Because I mean, I was there when the first movie came out. I saw it the first night that it came out. I saw it multiple times in theaters when it first came out. I went to see it in 2012 when it came out in 3D. And the thing about the 3D release, to me, also speaks to why this is, I think, strengthens my point, is that he went back and he went and redid the stars in the sky above the Titanic to make sure that it was historically accurate where the constellations were during the sailing of the Titanic. That to me feels like such an unnecessary thing to do. And to me, like, why does that matter? And one of the things that I love about James Cameron, and this speaks to the strengths of Terminator 2, is that, you know, as much as he is a slavish creator of technological advancement, we haven't even talked about the Abyss, but it's like he created all these like snorkeling underwater technologies to do these things, is that as much as he likes to create that technology, the thing that makes his movies stand out is that he also marries it with cool shit. And I mean that like in the broadest sense possible, is that like for all the things that he's devoted to or theoretically limited by in sort of technological trying to do something realistically, he will just lean in on something like the T-1000 or, you know, whatever it is, just to do something that looks absolutely fucking incredible on screen, whether or not it's possible. And to me, that's what elevates Terminator 2. And I think that that's at least over Titanic, which has all of this authenticity and this historical accuracy. But like, does that serve anyone other than his sort of fetishistic filmmaking goals with that, as opposed to watching a film like Terminator, where you get to not only have the experience of watching this thing, but you get to your personal imagination as a viewer is inspired.
Todd, you have a very suave vernacular that you've been using this entire show, and to hear you say cool shit threw me off for a second, but I'm glad we got to balance it out a little bit.
I want to talk about some cool shit, because I don't see how you can see the Titanic up in the air, its propellers out of the water, someone falls, bashes into it, and go, that is not cool shit. But also, you've done it again. You're refusing to engage with the movie on the level that it is. It's not a historically accurate, deep, like every single bit is perfectly there. Cameron put a lot of effort into it. He also cut an awful lot of that out. There's about 40 minutes of deleted scenes for Titanic. About 25 of them is added moments for the background real life characters. They're really cool moments. If you're a Titanic aficionado, they're fantastic. But they're not in the movie because he wants to put it on the focus of the story. And I think to dismiss the idea of putting that love story, using it as the framing device, going down to the ocean, making sure he can film that, and also the unique take on Titanic. There's so many different ways to do it. The fact that you think that there was nothing there and that it's just doing Titanic shows how well he does it and makes this the definitive take on Titanic. But like, in terms of imagination, like so many of the iconic shots in this movie are not related to what actually happened. The Kate and Leo stuff, there's when they're flying, I'm the king of the world, the drawing scene, the hand on the steamed window, all of that stuff is pure Cameron. And yeah, it may not be some liquid metal, but it is absolutely imagination creative. And I'm glad you brought up, just to round myself out, the thing about adding the stars, because it's kind of unnecessary. It's very Neil deGrasse Tyson kind of thing. But what did he do when T2 came out in 3D? He did a lot more than that. He went and the obvious stunt double of Arnie riding off the bridge, CGI'd Arnie's face on, so it was less obvious. He went back and fixed actual errors in T2 when he'd released it in 3D in 2017, 18, 19. In Titanic, all he could do was the sky. In T2, there are actual errors to fix. What does that say about which one James Cameron thinks is the more goated movie?
Oh, some fire to end the debate section. Todd, I wanted to give you the chance to rebut, but we are so over time in the debate section. Your chance to kind of rebut, your chance to bow tie it, your chance to throw a curveball in your argument comes right now with your closing statement. You have 1 minute to tell me why T2 Judgment Day is the greatest James Cameron movie of all time.
I mean, first of all, I will say that, you know, it sounds to me like Alex just desperately wants a heart of the ocean for his own, which is, you know, fine. But, you know, to me, again, to go back to sort of the foundations of what the Terminator is it is a exploration of a lot of deeper, important themes, that it also grafts onto it some of the coolest visual effects, some of the coolest physical stunts that has ever been shot for film. And again, you have this merging of all of this incredible technological filmmaking know-how that is applied in the service of telling a fantastical story that, to me, you know, while it in comparison to the comparatively relatable love story between any two people, not just these two people that are in Titanic, to me, I think that it elevates, inspires all the elements that moviegoers want, that fans want, that sci-fi fans, all these people yearn for every time they go to the theater.
That rounds out Todd's argument for why T2 is the greatest of all time in James Cameron's category. Alex, for you, you've made some feisty points this entire show, some feisty points. I'm yearning for another curveball. I'm yearning for something like that. I want to tell you how to close it out. You got a minute left. Tell me why Titanic is James Cameron's best.
The reason why, there's a lot of reasons why people hate on Titanic. People hated on it before it came out. It was over budget. It was going to be another Waterworld, all of that. And in the years since, there's been so many critiques made of it. And Todd's already read my article, so he knows that I have a rebuttal in there against the sentimentality. He hasn't brought up the door because he knows that the door actually is explained in the movie. Leo could not fit on there. But it does come down to one of the criticisms that I do make in my article about the sort of conversation around it. He doesn't like it because it's not an action movie. He wants the big James Cameron action movie. Titanic is not that. And the imagination point, time and again, it's like, oh, it's not imaginative because it's a real life event. That is so crazy. Is Schindler's List not one of Spielberg's greats? Is Oppenheimer not one of Nolan's best? It's just because it's not the genre that this person who thrives in a more fantastical setting works in doesn't mean that the movie is flawed or is lacking some of that great expertise. And I think, you know, using Schindler's List, using Oppenheimer as comparison points, those movies take everything those filmmakers honed over their more commercial movies and created something that in both cases ended up very commercial, but was incredibly grounded historical story. And Titanic is Cameron's version of that. And I think, you know, in the future, those three movies will be the ones that that future generations are going back to and learning about the past from. But Titanic, it's a movie that is a sweeping epic. It has a slightly corny love story, but absolutely fantastic recreation of the sinking. And I think anybody who can't recognize that greatness is, you know, wishing that there was a Terminator running around on the boat.
Alex went like 40 seconds over in his closing statement, and I was trying to cut him off. I was doing my best, but again, he was in flow state. We let him cook.
Sorry.
We let anyone cook on the show when they're in flow state. Guys, this was one of the most contentious debates we've had on the show so far. Thank you both for bringing the fire. Thank you both for bringing the historical points. Thank you both for bringing the analysis of film on a technical standpoint that I don't think has been brought to the show yet. I can't imagine anyone disagreeing with either of your two arguments, but James Cameron does have a pretty deep filmography. I'm not going to be the one to say Way of Water, but man, recency bias right now has that at the forefront of my mind. It's the James Cameron movie I've seen most recently compared to the two ones that you argued. And in terms of like revolutionary filmmaking, the Avatar franchise, there's a lot of good things you can say about his recent 21st century installments. Again, that's not necessarily my argument, but I'm saying in the idea of James Cameron being that revolutionary filmmaker, there are points to be made. If you disagree with Alex's GOAT, with Todd's GOAT, head on over to the comments of Alex's article on ScreenRant.com. If you're reading the article right now, scroll down to the bottom, drop your comments, give your selection for what your greatest James Cameron movie of all time is. If you make a well-argued argument, and yes, well-argued, don't just say you like The Abyss, tell us why. If you give us a well-argued argument, we'll read it on the show next week. Full kind of behind the curtains moment right now. We are recording these episodes out of order as it is the holiday season. So we don't have comments to read on this week's show from the previous week because that show has not been launched yet. But we do have an episode to tease for next week, which is going to be the greatest Christmas movie of all time. We're tripling down on the festivities this season. Alex and Todd, before we get out of here, do you have a greatest Christmas movie to fill the gap of where we would normally read the comments? Alex, we'll start with you.
My favorite Christmas movie, I like a lot of Christmas movies. It's a shame that there's not one set on the Titanic that sank in April. For me, it's A Wonderful Life. I recently went up to the real life Bedford Falls. I'm that much of a fan of that movie.
Todd, how about you?
Well, you'll learn my greatest Christmas movie choice when I debate it in the week of Christmas, because I'm going to be writing the goat story for that.
A great tease. I teed you up right there for it. You'll be our first ever 3-time guest on Challenge by Goat. We got to get you like a jacket, a big like gold blazer or something.
I love it. I love it.
We got to do something. For me, I'll save my pick for next week. But I got a million, and it's very different from the category that most people would select from when it comes to what qualifies a greatest Christmas movie. Because I love this season. Anyways, guys, thank you both so much for popping on Challenge by Goat once again. A rematch from our first ever episode, and you guys bring the fire. We'll eventually have to have the trilogy bout at some point down the line. Alex, where can the people find you? What do you got cooking over at MovieWeb this holiday season?
All right, they can find me personally on socials, AD Leadbeater on X, Blue Sky, all that good stuff. In terms of what's cooking, obviously, when's this episode going out? Okay, so yeah, we've got the Screen Awards, which is a Screen Portfolio-wide initiative. Screen Rant, Collider, MovieWeb, CBR, uniting for the first ever Screen Awards. We're going to be declaring Best Movie, Best Show, Best Performances, Best Anime. That's a big thing that's on the horizon. In terms of what's cooking on MovieWeb, we've got a load of year review content going up. And if you want to focus on movies that perhaps aren't goated, but are more forgettable, you should definitely check out Britt Hayes' column, Memory Hold on MovieWeb, where each week she spotlights a movie that you'll definitely have forgotten and maybe needs reappraisal, maybe doesn't. In the past, we've looked at Tomorrowland, we've looked at the Shane Black Predator, real deep dives on these movies that should remain in the discussion for good or ill.
Tomorrowland. I never thought I'd hear that title spoken again, and here we are. Jeez, wasn't that supposed to based on an amusement park, sorta, kinda? That
Yeah.
whole thing. Wow. Jeez. Throwback movie. Todd, where can people find you? What do you got cooking over at Screen Rant?
You can find me on Twitter at MT Gilchrist. You can find me on Instagram at bestdressedtodd. This week, we are publishing a cover story with a extended profile of Lucy Liu, whose new film Rosemead opened in New York last Friday and opens in LA this Friday, December 12th. And then other than that, we're going to have lots of similar year-end content like Alex was talking about at MovieWeb running in the weeks to come. And as I indicated earlier, I'm going to be the GOAT champion for our greatest Christmas movie of all time. And so people get a chance to read and listen to me debate that the week of Christmas.
Amazing. Looking forward to moderating that one and seeing what challenger picks get brought to the stage. For me, you can find me on all socials at Liam T. Crowley, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, most active on Instagram. As for what I have cooking at Screen Rant, like everyone has said already, a lot of year-end kind of stuff, bringing it all together. Speaking of Titanic, I just interviewed Kate Winslet yesterday, time of recording, for her directorial debut, a film called Goodbye June, which time of release of this episode is already streaming on Netflix. A whole bunch of Percy Jackson content. Season 2 has just kicked off on Disney Plus. It's going to go on for like a 7-week run with new episodes every Wednesday. A lot of fun content coming with that cast, from games to in-depth interviews to social content. You'll be well fed in the Percy Jackson world. So again, just keep it locked to Screen Rant. A lot of good stuff coming out to round out the year. A lot of good stuff coming on MovieWeb, Collider, CBR, everyone on the screen side of things. And I'm very excited to follow the Screen Awards as both a contributor and as a fan to see who we crown in those categories. Once again, Alex and Todd, thank you so much for joining us. To everyone else watching, we'll see you next week.